an electric car which he says converts radio frequencies into energy.
At the powertrain, we did it in-house, which makes it the first electric vehicle in the world that drives without needing recharging systems. On the greener power off-grid machine, it's very unique. For the first time, energy is being generated using a radio frequency and without moving parts.
Good skeptical rule of thumb, always bet on the laws of physics. They will rarely steer you wrong. So what are the claims that Maxwell Chikumbutso is actually making here? That report doesn't really do a good job of doing that, but doing as much background research as I could. He seems to be saying that you could run his electric car indefinitely off of ambient radio frequency waves, just radio frequency waves that are just in the air because of our technological culture that we're living in. So that claim is complete nonsense, demonstrable nonsense. It's simply not possible. What he's talking about is what we call energy harvesting. Harvesting energy from some ambient source and then using it in some purposeful way. That ambient source could be vibrations, it could be heat, it could be raindrops falling on, the sidewalk. In this case, it's radio frequency waves, right? It's just radio waves. And there's some energy in the radio waves that are going through the air that are being produced by all kinds of different technology. And you can harvest that energy, and that's not new. The idea that you can, make a machine that can use that ambient radio waves in order to generate an electrical current. We have that technology. Yep, that's fine. The problem is two things, really. One is the amount of energy that you can get from ambient radio frequencies, which I did, rough calculation. As far as I could tell, it's about 1 million times less than what a typical electric vehicle will have in one charge of a battery. We're talking 1 million times. So these kind of devices harvest milli or microwatts of electricity. They're the kind of thing that can be used to run a tiny sensor. One company put out a remote control that harvests some radio frequencies to run it, and it also has a little solar panel on it as well. So it's trying to run off of ambient energy as much as possible. Yeah, remote control, a tiny little sensor, something like that, where it's difficult. You don't want to swap out the battery, or you can't run a cable to it. So being able to harvest a teeny tiny amount of electricity from ambient radio frequencies is a fine idea. Running a electric car that uses a massive amount of electricity, now we're talking kilowatt hours of electricity. That's, again, 1 million times more energy than what has been demonstrated to be possible. There just isn't that much energy floating through the air in radio waves. Why would there be? You couldn't even run a single car off of it, let alone having a civilization with thousands or millions of cars running on ambient radio frequencies. That energy just simply does not exist. So what does Maxwell say? Well, he says, the only thing I've heard him say about that is that his car has a device in it which magnifies the electricity, magnifies the energy. Okay, that's a nonsense term. You can't just magnify energy. The energy has to come from somewhere, right? It's like enhance the image. Like, you can't do that. It doesn't exist in reality. The information has to be there. The energy has to be there. That claim is pure nonsense. It violates the laws of physics. The notion that you're going to be able to run a car on 1 millionth of the energy that it probably would need to actually function is, again, pure nonsense. So, but could this idea happen? What if we were specifically pumping out energy in the radio frequency so that devices could run off of it? Yeah, Tesla had that idea. What was that, 80 years ago? That's not harvesting ambient energy. Now we're trying to transmit energy wirelessly, basically. And again, this is something that not a new idea, not new technology. There are two basic ways that is approached. One is very, very short distance. And so if you're doing a very, very short distance coupling, then you can do that sort of in a field. And but there's also long distance, which is what you would need if you're driving in a car on the road. And that's usually beamed, usually with either microwaves or with laser, like visible light lasers. Not radio frequency. Radio frequency is not one that you would use. And you wouldn't be pumping it out in all directions. You would have to sort of beam it specifically at the target, and using probably microwaves would be the frequency that you would use. But again, that's not what he's talking about. He's not talking about shooting microwaves at the car in order to drive it. And the thing is, we wouldn't do that either because it's inefficient. There's a massive loss of efficiency. Why wouldn't you just run a cable? Why would you try to do it over the airwaves and have to then generate way more energy than you otherwise would, because there's going to be a loss in the wireless transmission? Also, these energy harvesting devices tend to be inefficient at their end, and so they're not getting 100% of the energy. Every time you convert the energy, you make electricity, you convert it to microwaves, that's a loss of energy. Then you convert it back into electricity to charge a battery in your electric car, that's a loss of energy. Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just plug it into the wall? It makes no sense. So no, he hasn't revolutionized physics. He's basically using old technology extremely inefficiently, and then explaining how it could work by inventing magic. Like, you can't just magnify energy 1,000,000 times by some mystery device. And so that's the science of it, right? The scientific claims are nonsense. They're beyond extraordinary. They break the laws of physics, and they make absolutely no sense. Beyond that, it needs to be said that he has not actually demonstrated his technology to anyone, right? He hasn't been able to demonstrate it. And this is now going back to 2016, 2017. He's had time. There's been time. It's been years. If he's been sitting on something even remotely close to what he's claiming for years, then he hasn't had the ability to demonstrate it to the scientific community, to demonstrate it to anyone. He says he cannot get his device patented because you can't get a patent on a device that breaks the laws of physics. He's correct there. You can't. And the patent office, at least in the US, will not patent a free energy device, which is what he's selling. He's selling a free energy device. If it's making more energy than it's taking in, or using more energy, putting out more energy than it's taking in, it's by definition a free energy device. Yeah, they won't patent them because they don't exist, because it's pseudoscience. It's nonsense. It has nothing to do with anything else. And then the final layer you get into from a critical thinking skeptical point of view is then the conspiracy theory. And you read the comments under the video. This just keeps coming back and back, these now 7-8-year-old claims, because of social media. Somebody, this is great clickbait, right? So this gets just recycled as clickbait over and over again. And you read the comments and everyone's like, oh, this guy better watch his back, man. He's going to get killed by the powers that be, who don't want these free energy cars driving on the roads. Again, it's just that kind of gratuitous conspiracy mongering, again, is just another form of nonsense. If this technology existed, if it were possible, again, the idea came up decades ago, this is not something that would actually be new, then you couldn't keep a lid on that. There could be 1,000 labs around the world, that could reproduce this kind of engineering, this kind of technology. So you have to then couple the conspiracy mongering, which people just make up whole cloth, with this idea of the lone genius. Well, this guy is just such a fantastic genius that he came up with this, seemingly impossible technology that no one else can even fathom how we could possibly have done it. And again, the world just doesn't work that way. Yes, of course, there are individual people who are brilliant and knowledgeable and experts, and they come up with breakthroughs and innovations. But you ever notice that, especially in the last century or so, that whenever somebody comes up with any kind of invention, there's like 10 other people who claim they invented it at the same time. You know why? Because basically they did. Because multiple people were converging on that invention that was ripe. It was possible. Like the prerequisites were all in place. The idea that that one person would come up with something like that's years ahead of time, and even knowing that it exists, nobody can reproduce it. Again, the laws of physics are the laws of physics. They're right. There is no magic here. So sorry, I don't believe any of these claims that are being made. This is just recycled clickbait. Don't believe it. Trust in the laws of physics.